The forest was eerily quiet, save for the rustle of leaves in the cold night breeze. Moonlight streamed through the canopy, casting silvery patterns on the forest floor. I stood frozen, my flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. Behind a tall, ancient oak tree, I could just make out the silhouette of someone, or something. My heart raced. It was no ordinary figure. She was tall, slender, and exuded an otherworldly aura. Her skin shimmered faintly, as though dusted with starlight, and her eyes, even from a distance, seemed impossibly large and luminous. "Who's there?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no response. Slowly, cautiously, I stepped closer. The figure flinched, retreating further behind the tree. I stopped. "It's okay," I said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The silence stretched on. Then, to my surprise, she stepped out from behind the tree. Her movements were fluid and graceful, almost like she was gliding. Now fully in the moonlight, I could see her clearly. Her hair, long and silken, shifted in colors that reminded me of a twilight sky. Her eyes, a mesmerizing shade of gold, locked onto mine. Her attire was like nothing I'd ever seen, a flowing garment that seemed to ripple like liquid metal. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, as though trying to understand. Then she raised a hand and touched her chest. Her voice, melodic yet unfamiliar, formed a word that sounded like Aeyrin. "Aeyrin." I repeated. She nodded. "I'm Jack," I said, pointing to myself. She mirrored the gesture, her golden eyes filled with curiosity. For a moment, we just stood there, two beings from different worlds, staring at each other. Then, she gestured for me to follow. Against my better judgment, I did. Aeyrin led me deeper into the forest, her movements silent and assured. We eventually reached a clearing where a strange, metallic structure sat nestled among the trees. It was sleek, egg-shaped, and shimmered faintly under the moonlight. A soft hum emanated from it, like a heartbeat. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. With a wave of her hand, a portion of the structure opened, revealing a small, dimly lit interior. She stepped inside and looked back, waiting for me to follow. Hesitating only a moment, I stepped in. The interior was unlike anything I could have imagined. The walls pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent glow, and the air was warm and slightly sweet. Strange symbols floated mid-air, rearranging themselves as Aeyrin waved her hand. She spoke, her tone urgent, and pointed to a floating holographic image that resembled Earth. "You need help?" I asked, trying to decipher her intentions. She nodded, her expression pleading. Her hand moved, and the hologram zoomed in on a section of the forest. A red dot blinked ominously. Suddenly, the structure shook. A deep, guttural sound echoed outside, followed by the crash of trees. Aeyrin's eyes widened with fear. She grabbed my arm and pulled me to the side of the craft. Through a translucent panel, I saw them, dark, hulking figures moving through the forest. Their eyes glowed a menacing crimson, and their bodies were encased in black, chitinous armor. "They're after you," I said, the realization sinking in. Aeyrin nodded, her hand trembling as she activated a panel. A faint field of light shimmered around the craft. The creatures outside began to encircle the clearing. One of them stepped forward, raising a weapon-like appendage. It emitted a sharp, piercing sound that made me clap my hands over my ears. The light field around the craft flickered. "It won't hold, will it?" I asked. Aeyrin shook her head. She turned to me, her golden eyes filled with desperation. Then she placed her hands on my temples. I gasped as a flood of images and emotions surged into my mind. I saw her home planet, a world bathed in soft, ethereal light, its skies alive with colors beyond the spectrum of Earth. I felt her sorrow as her world was invaded by the dark creatures now outside. She had escaped, carrying something vital, a shimmering orb that now rested in a compartment within the craft. It pulsed with a light that felt alive, almost like a heartbeat. "What is it?" I asked, the connection fading as she pulled her hands away. She spoke a single word, her voice heavy with meaning: hope. The craft shuddered again. The creatures were closing in. Aeyrin pressed a series of symbols, and a small compartment opened, revealing the orb. She handed it to me, her expression resolute. "Me." I stammered. "You want me to take it?" She nodded, then pointed to a glowing panel near the entrance. The symbols rearranged themselves into something I could understand, an escape route leading back to the edge of the forest. "What about you?" I asked. She shook her head, her gaze firm. She pointed to the creatures outside, then back to herself. She was going to stay and buy me time. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "There has to be another way." Aeyrin placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. Then she pushed me toward the panel. The entrance to the craft opened, and she gestured for me to go. I hesitated, clutching the orb. Then, with one last look at her, I ran. The forest was a blur as I sprinted through the trees, the orb's light guiding my way. Behind me, I heard the sounds of a fierce battle, explosions, guttural roars, and the hum of energy weapons. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't stop. Eventually, I reached the edge of the forest. The orb's light dimmed, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. When I looked back, the forest was eerily silent. The metallic craft was gone, as were the creatures. All that remained was an unnatural stillness. For weeks, I tried to make sense of what had happened. The orb remained with me, its light faint but constant. I felt its presence, a quiet reassurance that Aeyrin's sacrifice had not been in vain. Then, one night, the orb flared to life. It projected a hologram of Aeyrin. Her image was faint, but her golden eyes were unmistakable. "Jack," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "Hope lives because of you." The hologram faded, but the orb continued to glow, brighter now than ever. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. And that hope, no matter how small, can light the way forward. I still keep the orb with me, its light a constant companion. The forest has regrown, lush and vibrant, as if Aeyrin's presence had left a mark on the land itself. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I look up at the stars and wonder if she's out there, watching over us. Wherever she is, I know one thing for certain: her legacy endures. And I will do everything I can to honor it.